Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping in for, well, an explosive look at one of the most iconic and, truly successful rock performers of her era, Janis Joplin.
Yeah, and if you know the story, the short, frantic life, the massive voice, the tragic end, it's one of the defining narratives of the 1960s counterculture.
Exactly. But we want to go deeper. We're going to be analyzing the stack of sources that reveal the really intricate reality behind that legend.
Joplin's career was, it was a supernova. It just burned blindingly bright for only 8 active years. We're talking roughly 1962 to 1970.
8 years, that's it.
That's it. And in that, tiny window, she completely redefined what a female vocalist in rock and roll could be. This is an artist with a signature sound, right? That powerful, just gut-wrenching mezzo-soprano delivery, coupled with a truly distinctive rock and roll rasp.
And that rasp, it wasn't just, noise. It was an instrument of raw emotion. It was this sound combined with a truly, I think the only word is electric stage presence that allowed her to just captivate millions.
It's astonishing, the speed and scale of her fame. It still is, especially when you consider she left us with just 4 studio albums.
4. 2 with Big Brother and the Holding Company, and 2 that were solo or, posthumous efforts, all before her death at that notorious age of 27.
And the commercial impact, it really speaks for itself. I was looking at the numbers. As of 2013, her albums had achieved RIAA certifications totaling 18.5 million sales in the U.S. alone.
Wow. And you have to put that in context.
You absolutely do. That number reflects monumental success. And it was achieved primarily through albums released when mass media was still, kind of evolving. She didn't have decades to build a catalog. She hit global superstar status practically overnight.
And that rapid ascent, I imagine, heavily contributed to the instability we're going to talk about.
For sure.
So that's our mission today. We want to unpack how this fragile, alienated girl from Texas became this global force. We're going to analyze the precise moments, from the trauma of her adolescence right up to the intensity of her final recording sessions that defined her life. We really want to understand Janis Joplin, the misfit, the musician, and the enduring force of nature she remains.
To really get that volcanic sound she unleashed on the world, you have to start where she started, the environment she was so desperately trying to escape.
Port Arthur, Texas, 1943.
Right. And her background was, remarkably conventional. It's such a stark contrast to the bohemian life she would later seek out. Her father was an engineer at Texaco.
Okay.
Her mother was a registrar at a local business college. Just a middle-class family active in the First Christian Church.
And right there, in that totally conventional setting, the seeds of her lifelong alienation were sown, weren't they? Our sources say that her parents, though they loved her, they perceived Janis as different. They felt she needed more attention than her 2 younger siblings, Laura and Michael. That perception, it suggests a really early mismatch between Janis's own, internal complexity and the simple expectations of her environment.
And that subtle family disconnect, it just exploded into full-blown trauma during her high school years.
At Thomas Jefferson High School in Port Arthur.
Yeah, and the sources, they describe her experience there as just relentlessly brutal. An environment of intense, pervasive bullying that targeted her appearance, her intellectual curiosity, her refusal to conform to the town's, narrow social code.
The names she was subjected to are just chilling. Pig, freak, creep. But the one that really stands out, the most painful and revealing insult, was N-word lover.
Right.
What does that tell us about the environment she was navigating? It suggests that her reading, her painting, her thinking, her independence were directly equated with, moral deviance in that conservative setting.
It speaks volumes about her emotional and moral compass, doesn't it? She was recognizing the hypocrisy and prejudice around her, and her refusal to play along just made her a target.
Yeah.
That famous quote frames her perfectly. I was a misfit. I read, I painted, I thought, I didn't hate black people. Her identity, even as a teenager, it was forged in isolation and resistance.
It's also a fascinating little footnote in history that she was a classmate of the future Pro Football Hall of Fame coach, Jimmy Johnson.
I know. 2 wildly different paths coming out of the exact same small town.
But thankfully for her and for rock history, that profound alienation became the key to finding her creative direction. It pushed her away from the mainstream and toward the marginalized.
Exactly. She befriended a group of outcasts who shared her curiosity and crucially gave her access to the foundational music that would define her career.
And this is where the blues enters the picture.
This is it. Not the radio hits of the day, but the seminal, raw voices of American music. Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, Lead Belly. The pain, the grit, the unvarnished emotion in their music resonated with the deep hurt and loneliness Janis was feeling.
It wasn't just a casual interest, was it?
Not at all. It was a revelation. It solidified her decision to become a professional singer. It gave her all that internal turmoil, a powerful language.
She took her first sort of tentative steps toward performing while she was at the University of Texas at Austin, though she famously never graduated.
With a folk trio called the Waller Creek Boys.
Yeah.
She was already channeling those powerful blues influences, just through more of a folk lens.
And the local paper even noticed her, the Daily Texan.
They did. A July 1962 article headlined, "She Dares to Be Different." It immortalized her budding, rebellious persona. They highlighted her unconventional clothes, her preference for Levi's, which was still unusual for women on campus then, and her insistence on carrying her auto harp everywhere, ready to perform at a moment's notice. She was visibly setting herself apart, adopting the style of the beatniks and the folk scene.
But the Austin folk scene, it wasn't going to be big enough to contain that fire, was it?
Not even close. In January 1963, she makes the decisive move. She hitchhikes directly to North Beach, San Francisco, with her friend, the future promoter, Chet Helms. She later said she left Texas just to get away because her head was just in a much different place.
And San Francisco at that time was the absolute epicenter of Bohemian freedom.
Oh, yeah. Once there, she fully adopted a style influenced not just by her female blues heroines, but also by the beat poets of North Beach. And it was around this time, maybe just before the move, that she made her very first recording, a song called "What Good Can Drinkin' Do?"
And we have some amazing artifacts from her early acoustic work.
Yeah.
The sources mentioned the typewriter tape.
Yes. A later bootleg from 1964, it's got blues standards recorded with Jorma Kaukonen, who would go on to co-found Jefferson Airplane.
And the tape is named because during the raw session, Kaukonen's wife, Margareta, was just sitting in the background typing away.
Right, providing this totally unique, accidental piece of historical ambiance. It's such a testament to the spontaneous, unpolished nature of the folk and blues scene she was in.
But this period of artistic freedom, it quickly, it darkened into genuine distress.
It really did. The 2 years after she arrived, from 63 to 65, that marks a severe descent. The sources confirm her drug use escalated drastically. She got a reputation as a speed freak and an occasional heroin user.
And this wasn't just like recreational use. This was destructive self-medication that took a huge physical toll. She was described as skeletal and emaciated. The legal trouble started early, too. She was arrested for shoplifting in 63. The freedom she was looking for had quickly morphed into self-destruction.
And her friends, they saw the critical danger she was in. In May 1965, they staged an intervention. They noted that she weighed only 88 pounds.
88 pounds, wow.
Yeah. It was a literal matter of life and death. They pooled their money, arranged a bus fare party, and basically shipped her back to Port Arthur, back to her parents in a desperate attempt to save her life.
Can you imagine the humiliation? The feeling of failure she must have had, returning to the very place she'd scorned, looking like a ghost of the person who left seeking freedom? It was a harrowing low point.
And that forced return to Texas, it marked this really concerted effort at rehabilitation, at normalcy. For nearly a year, from May 65 to mid-66, Joplin tried hard to avoid drugs and alcohol.
She adopted a conventional look, right? She ditched the bohemian clothes for conservative outfits and even had a beehive hairdo.
A beehive. And she enrolled at Lamar University, trying to major in anthropology or maybe social work, just seeking a stable, structured life.
She also tried to find stability in her romantic life. She got engaged to a guy named Peter DeBlanc, who was working with IBM Computers in New York.
Right. They started making wedding plans with her mother. It suggests a real effort to integrate into the societal expectations she had fled. But DeBlanc, he was a busy guy, traveled a lot for work, and he ended the engagement pretty quickly.
So the attempt at conventional happiness just failed.
It fell apart, and this period is so vital for understanding the recurring sort of binary choice she felt she faced. The sources highlight her regular sessions with a psychiatric social worker, Bernard Geritano. She would bring her acoustic guitar to these sessions, and he could hear her practicing from his other offices. It shows how deeply intertwined her identity was with her music. He tried to tell her that success didn't require narcotics, but she was deeply skeptical.
And the dilemma she laid out for him is just heartbreakingly black and white. She felt her only options were to pursue music, which she was terrified meant a relapse into self-destruction,
Oh.
or quit singing professionally, which meant she would become a key punch operator or a secretary and then a wife and mother, just like the other women in Port Arthur.
She saw artistic freedom and professional stability as totally mutually exclusive paths. That is the central conflict of her entire life.
But the artistic urge was just too powerful to suppress.
Of course. In 1966, the call came, literally a second chance. She was recruited to join a new band, Big Brother and the Holding Company, by Chet Helms, the same promoter who helped her hitchhike to San Francisco years before.
So she went back, but she did it deceptively.
Yeah, she gave her parents the impression that Big Brother was an Austin band. She was trying to soften the blow of her leaving Texas again, and specifically avoided mentioning San Francisco, the site of her last collapse.
So they only found out the truth when she wrote to them after she'd already joined the band.
Right, on June 4th, 1966. And initially she was terrified of relapsing. She shared an apartment with Travis Rivers and made him promise strictly no needles allowed.
But the environment of the counterculture was pretty unforgiving.
Totally. She came home one day with her bandmate, Dave Getz, and they discovered Rivers' guests actively injecting drugs in her apartment.
And she just lost it.
She went nuts, according to Getz, screaming and crying, "We had a pact, you promised me. There wouldn't be any of that in front of me." It really shows how committed she was to staying clean in that second San Francisco stint, and just how fragile that commitment was.
But that raw energy, that was what fueled her professional performance. The real commercial launch came with the band's appearance at the Monterey Pop Festival in June of '67.
Monterey Pop, that was the moment. The moment the world saw the intensity she'd only unleashed in small clubs before. The director, D.A. Pennebaker, he captured her performance of Ball and Chain with such visceral emotion that it just instantly elevated her to prominence.
Their self-titled debut album came out shortly after that in August '67.
Right. It was modestly successful, had some minor hits like Down on Me and Bye Bye Baby, but it was the sophomore effort that became the cultural phenomenon.
Cheap Thrills in 1968.
Cheap Thrills was a massive, generation-defining success. It hit #1 on the Billboard 200, stayed there for 8 non-consecutive weeks. This wasn't just a hit album, it was a cultural statement.
And the key singles, Piece of My Heart and Summertime, they became instant anthems. They showcased her unique ability to fuse that blues pain with a psychedelic rock energy.
And this is where the production style becomes such a crucial part of the story. The album sounds so raw, so live and chaotic.
Which was a deliberate decision, right? By her manager, Albert Grossman, and the band.
Absolutely. Most of the tracks were actually recorded in the studio, even though the album sleeve kind of suggests it's all live.
So it wasn't a live album?
No, only the definitive version of Ball and Chain that they used was recorded live in front of an audience. But the production embraced the imperfections. It matched the counterculture's demand for unpolished authenticity over glossy studio perfection.
I love this detail. During the studio recording of Turtle Blues, the microphone actually captured the sound of a drinking glass breaking.
And the shards being swept away. And they kept it in.
They kept it in. That incidental noise became like an accidental character in the story. It makes you feel like you're right there in the room, witnessing the chaos and the energy.
It cemented her image as this authentic, take-no-prisoners performer. It set her apart from the slicker pop acts of the era. The success of Cheap Thrills confirmed her place, for sure, but it also just ramped up the pressure astronomically.
And that massive success and all the pressure that came with it, that led pretty quickly to the splitting of Big Brother, didn't it?
It did. Janis felt constrained by the band's psychedelic style. She was looking for a more structured, a more sophisticated sound that could better showcase her vocals, which were often kind of buried in that Big Brother wall of sound.
So in late '68, she makes the pivot. She forms the Kozmic Blues Band.
Right. And while it did include a couple of familiar faces, Sam Andrew from Big Brother on guitar and the future full-tilt Boogie bassist Brad Campbell, this was a real attempt to fundamentally shift her musical direction.
And this shift was like deliberate and radical.
Totally. The Kozmic Blues sound moved away from the San Francisco psychedelic scene and leaned heavily into 1960s soul music, specifically the tight, horn-driven grooves of Stax Volt R&B.
So think Otis Redding, the Bar-Kays.
Exactly. That heavy, driving bass line, the organ, the tight, structured arrangements. It was a massive stylistic departure from the messy, spontaneous chemistry of Big Brother.
The result was her first solo album, I Got Dem Ol' Kozmic Blues Again Mama,
Right.
which came out in September of '69. Commercially, it was a success. It was certified gold at #5 on the charts. But critically, it caused a major divide.
Oh, the critical community was genuinely polarized. On one hand, you had the Bay Area traditionalists like Ralph J. Gleason from the San Francisco Chronicle. He called the new band a drag.
A drag, wow.
Yeah, he explicitly told her to scrap the Kozmic Blues Band and go right back to being a member of Big Brother if they'll have her. He just felt the shift sacrificed her raw energy for, polished professionalism.
But on the other side, Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post defended the move.
He did.
Yeah.
He praised the new lineup, saying she had finally assembled a group of first-rate musicians with whom she is totally at ease and whose abilities complement the incredible range of her voice. So it shows that she was evolving as an artist, even if her core audience and the critics were kind of confused by the transition.
But what's undeniable is that alongside this professional divergence, her private battle just intensified dramatically.
It really did. The sources allege that by early 1969, her dependence on heroin was severe, and the financial cost alone was staggering. She was spending at least $200 a day.
Wait, $200 a day back then, if we factor in inflation, that's equivalent to over, what, $1,700 every single day in 2024?
$1,715. It's an astonishing burn rate. It put her under constant financial and physical pressure.
How did she even manage to function, let alone record an album and tour with that kind of constant demand and physical drain?
It really speaks to the relentless schedule and the depth of the addiction. Her producer for the Kozmic Blues album, Gabriel Meckler, he saw the danger. He made specific, strenuous efforts to keep her clean during the record's production, controlling who had access to her, trying to keep her away from her drug-using friends.
A constant, exhausting battle.
Fought on both fronts, professional and personal. And that struggle reached a disastrous public peak during the legendary Woodstock Festival in August of '69.
Right. Joplin and her band performed at, 2 in the morning on Sunday, but they'd been backstage enduring this brutal 10-hour wait.
And that delay proved catastrophic for her fragile stability. The sources are very clear. During that long wait, Janis spent time shooting heroin and drinking heavily in a tent with her friend, and sometimes lover, Peggy Caserta.
So by the time she finally took the stage, she was visibly impaired.
Pete Townsend of The Who saw her set, he later confirmed this in his memoir. He said she wasn't at her best, due, he suspected, to the long delay and the combination of booze and heroin she'd consumed. The footage, when it was finally released, it backs this up. She looks uncomfortable. She lacks the cohesion with her new band.
And her own dissatisfaction with the performance was so intense that she insisted it be entirely excluded from the wildly popular 1970 documentary film and soundtrack.
She vetoed her own inclusion. She was that critical of herself. It wasn't until the 1994 director's cut that her performance of Work Me, Lord was finally made public.
And post-Woodstock, her personal life just continued to spiral into public view. In November '69, she faced legal trouble in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, she was arrested for yelling vulgar and indecent language at police officers who were managing the crowd. She specifically yelled, "Don't fuck with those people."
She was later found guilty, fined $200 plus court costs. It seems less about, incitement and more about a complete loss of control and a willingness to just publicly confront authority.
And then, just a month later, her instability reached a critical level at a Rolling Stones concert at Madison Square Garden on Thanksgiving Day. Her own publicist turned biographer, Myra Friedman, witnessed her behavior during an unscheduled duet with Tina Turner.
And Friedman's description is just chilling. She saw Joplin as being so drunk, so stoned, so out of control that she could have been an institutionalized psychotic rent by mania.
I mean, for someone who was professionally managing her image, this was a flashing red light about her overall stability and health.
Friedman also detailed the immense pressure Janis felt at these major venues, like the Garden. She said Janis felt scrutinized by the audience. She told a rock journalist that these crowds watched and listened to every note she sang with, "Is she going to make it?" in their eyes.
Wow. She was carrying the burden of being the female rock and roll identity, and the weight was just crushing her.
So 1969 closes with the final gig of the Kozmic Blues Band, that difficult Madison Square Garden show. The experiment was over. It was creatively and personally exhausting.
Yeah, Sam Andrew, the big brother guitarist she'd brought along, he'd already quit the previous summer. That was a sign the end was near.
So the transition from the sort of disaster of the Kozmic Blues era into 1970, it offered this crucial window of hope.
It really did. Janis took a well-needed vacation to Brazil with her friend Linda Gravenites, and crucially, while she was there, she managed to stop using drugs and alcohol completely.
This was a genuine attempt at personal survival, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It links back to that whole Giarratana motif of trying to find stability outside of Port Arthur's definition of it.
For sure. She was romanced by a fellow American tourist, David Niehaus, who was traveling the world. The biographer Ellis Amber noted the photos from this time, showing them looking like a carefree, happy, healthy young couple.
Niehaus wasn't into drugs.
Right. He provided a supportive, clean environment, and Janis genuinely tried to kick her heroin habit. It was this heartbreakingly brief moment of normalcy.
But it ended almost immediately after she got back to the U.S.
Yeah, the sources say she resumed injecting drugs. And this was tragically complicated by her ongoing relationship with Peggy Caserta, who was also an intravenous drug user. She returned to the environment of her addiction, and the stability she found in Brazil just evaporated.
But despite the personal relapse, she refocused with incredible professional intensity. She formed her final, and maybe her best, band, initially called Main Squeeze, then quickly renamed the Full Tilt Boogie Band.
And this time, she wasn't just joining a band or hiring session players. She took a decisive, active role in its formation. She chose mainly young Canadian musicians, crafting a very precise sound.
And importantly, she opted for an organ presence, but deliberately excluded the horn section that had defined the Kozmic blues sound.
Exactly, allowing her voice to sit right front and center. This structure gave her the sophisticated musical backing she craved without sacrificing that necessary spontaneity.
And she loved this group. She was so proud of the Full Tilt Boogie Band. She famously said, "It's my band. Finally, it's my band."
And the early response from critics and fans was just overwhelmingly positive. It suggested she had, at last, found her perfect musical vehicle just months before she died.
And we have powerful visual evidence of this final happy era from the Festival Express tour in the summer of 1970.
Oh yeah, that legendary tour across Canada. The footage of her phenomenal performance of Tell Mama in Calgary later became a popular MTV video. It just showcases the Full Tilt Boogie Band's power and her renewed confidence.
And she used this success to gain a profound degree of personal vindication against the trauma of her past. On the Dick Cavett Show on June 25, 1970, she publicly announced she was going to attend her 10-year high school reunion. She openly admitted to Cavett and millions of viewers that her schoolmates had previously laughed me out of class, out of town, and out of the state.
And the reunion itself on August 14th, it was meant to be this triumphant return, but it turned out to be less satisfying than she hoped.
Right. She went back to Port Arthur with her new fiancé, Seth Morgan, her road manager, and her sister. But the reports say it was an unhappy experience where she just spent her time denigrating the town and the classmates who had humiliated her.
It suggests that no amount of global success could truly heal those deep adolescent scars.
But there's this incredibly poignant and redemptive story that happened just before that reunion.
On August 7th, 1970.
Yes. Joplin jointly paid for a tombstone for her ultimate musical influence, the blues legend Bessie Smith.
Smith's grave had been unmarked since her death in 1937. This act, it wasn't just charity. It was a profound public statement of respect and a direct connection to the lineage of the blues queens she saw herself upholding.
Which brings us to the final, frantic, brilliant chapter, the recording of Pearl.
In late August 1970, Joplin checks into the Landmark Motor Hotel in Hollywood and begins rehearsing and recording the album with producer Paul A. Rothchild, who is known for his ability to handle big personalities and craft definitive rock sounds.
Her personal life, though, it remained chaotic during the sessions. She was engaged to Seth Morgan, a 21-year-old UC Berkeley student who was also a cocaine dealer.
Right, and they'd been involved since July, but Morgan was only present for 8 of her many rehearsal and recording sessions. That suggests he was far from a stabilizing force in her life.
But the creative burst she experienced was just remarkable. On October 1st, 1970, she completed her very last recording.
The iconic a cappella Mercedes-Benz, which, the source notes, was recorded in a single effortless take. The song was partially written with folk singer Bob Newirth at a bar, famously jotted down on cocktail napkins.
We often assume Mercedes-Benz was her absolute last piece of recorded work, but the very final recording she made was actually a spontaneous, playful moment a few days earlier on September 26.
Yeah, a brief 1-minute birthday greeting featuring the song Happy Trails, recorded for John Lennon. Just a final, lighthearted moment captured before the tragedy.
Then on Saturday, October 3, the Full Tilt Boogie Band recorded the instrumental track for a song called Buried Alive in the Blues.
And Joplin listened to the track and agreed to record the vocals the very next day. That session, of course, was canceled.
That Saturday was just defined by the relentless duality of her life, wasn't it? She was overjoyed about the progress on Pearl. Everything was clicking creatively. But at the same time, people at Sunset Sound Recorders overheard her expressing anger. She had learned that her fiancé, Seth Morgan, had been unfaithful.
Success and turmoil, inseparable right up to the end.
We also have details about her final movements. Her attorney noted she loved to drive her famous psychedelic Porsche over the speed limit on Sunset Boulevard.
Her keyboardist, Ken Pearson, who was a stable, non-drug-using presence, he often hesitated to ride with her, but he did on the night of her death.
But the profound disappointment leading up to her death is just heartbreaking. She was expecting both Seth Morgan and Peggy Caserta to keep her company that Friday night, October 2.
And both of them failed to show. It deeply upset her. Caserta later admitted she waited until late Saturday night to call the hotel, only to learn Janis had instructed the desk clerk to hold all calls after midnight.
She spent her final night alone, rejected by the two people she most wanted near her.
And then on Sunday evening, October 4th, 1970, she was found dead on the floor of her room at the Landmark Motor Hotel by her road manager, John Byrne Cook,
who recognized the tragedy immediately. The official cause of death was a heroin overdose, possibly compounded by alcohol. It was ruled accidental.
But the details surrounding the discovery are mired in controversy. The LA County coroner, Thomas Noguchi, he later wrote in a 1983 book that evidence of narcotics was initially removed by a friend and then returned to the scene.
Why would they do that?
Well, the person probably realized an autopsy would inevitably reveal narcotics in her system anyway. It suggests this heartbreaking, desperate act of loyalty by someone trying to protect her legacy in the immediate aftermath, an attempt to conceal the cause that ultimately failed.
Her road manager, John Byrne Cook, he had his own, more technical theory.
He did. He believed the heroin Janis got that weekend was far more potent than usual. He cited the tragic fact that several of her dealer's other customers also overdosed that same weekend.
So that suggests the accidental nature might have been due to unforeseen strength, rather than a willful, fatal dose.
Right. And then finally, there's the highly controversial alternative theory from Peggy Caserta. She later insisted Janis's death was not just an overdose.
What was her theory?
Caserta claimed Janis hit her head after her sandal heel caught in the hotel's shag carpet, causing her to lose balance and fall. Now, while that doesn't discount the role of drugs, it introduces an element of physical accident that complicates the narrative of a straightforward overdose.
Regardless of the exact sequence of events, the outcome was the same. But the final, enduring triumph was the album she had just completed, Pearl.
Released posthumously in January 1971, it became the biggest seller of her career, hit #1 on the Billboard 200, and featured her only #1 single, the definitive recording of Chris Christopherson's Me and Bobby McGee.
Joplin's sudden passing at 27 instantly cemented her status, not just as a rock icon, but as a defining member of a tragic rock archetype.
The 27 Club. Her death contributed significantly to the cultural mythology around it.
And the timing just made the impact exponential. Rock icon Jimi Hendrix had died just 16 days earlier.
And Canned Heat singer Alan Wilson died a month before that, all three at the age of 27. The music world was just reeling from the simultaneous loss of three figures who had defined the sound of the late 60s.
It felt like a cosmic tragedy, didn't it? It reinforced the myth that these intense talents were simply too fragile or too brilliant to last.
And critically, her musical reputation has only solidified over time. She's universally praised for her devastatingly original voice and her unique ability to embody both the overpowering aggression of rock and the deeply vulnerable honesty of the blues.
Some critics even called her the female version of Elvis Presley for her groundbreaking stage presence and her ability to command an audience.
Her visual style was just as influential as her voice, too. The flamboyant feathered boas, the wide-brimmed hats, and her early unapologetic embrace of body art.
She famously had a wristlet and a small heart tattooed on her left breast by the legendary San Francisco artist Lyle Tuttle.
Right, and this was long before tattoos became mainstream. It marked her as an early champion for body art in popular culture.
Her legacy also quickly translated to dramatic fiction. The 1979 film The Rose, which was loosely based on her life, was originally supposed to be titled Pearl.
But her family declined to allow the producers the rights to her actual story and music, so it was heavily fictionalized and renamed.
But the dramatic power of her life story was evident in the film's success. Bette Midler, who played the lead role, gave this powerhouse performance that earned her a Golden Globe.
Yeah, even in a fictionalized form, the raw elements of Joplin's life, the intense pressures, the overwhelming fame, the substance abuse, it all proved to be compelling, dramatic material.
And she was immortalized by her peers through music.
Mm-hmm. Leonard Cohen's classic Chelsea Hotel #2 is famously and explicitly about their romantic encounter. Jerry Garcia's Birdsong was written about Joplin, and according to the lyricist Robert Hunter, specifically about the end of her suffering through death.
And Mimi Frieda's In the Quiet Morning, later covered by Joan Baez, that was another tribute. Her influence just permeated the entire folk and rock community.
We do have to address the enduring controversy surrounding her relationship with Peggy Caserta, as this narrative continues to shape how people understand Joplin's final years.
Okay, so in 1973, Caserta published the memoir, Going Down with Janis.
Right. And it was highly sensationalized. It provided graphic details of drug use and sexual acts, including Caserta's claim of engaging in oral sex with Joplin while they were high on heroin.
And that book caused immense chaos and, tragically, violence.
It really did. It contained details that angered her heroin dealer, who then sought revenge on Caserta. When he couldn't find her, he targeted her close friend Kim Chappell and stabbed her 3 times in the chest.
Wow. Did she survive?
Thankfully, Chappell recovered, but the incident is a horrifying example of the real-world, dangerous repercussions that came from sensationalizing her life.
But decades later, the narrative shifted dramatically.
It did. In 2018, Caserta published a second memoir, I Ran Into Some Trouble, where she completely disowned the 1973 book. She claimed it was essentially the pornographic fantasy of her co-author.
So in the later memoir, she described her relationship with Joplin as long, friendly, and only occasionally romantic, a much different, less sensational picture.
Exactly. And beyond the biographical controversy, her contributions have been widely recognized by institutions. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995.
And she received a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2005. Her family has also worked tirelessly to manage her legacy. Her younger sister, Laura Joplin, wrote the definitive 1992 biography, Love, Janis,
which later inspired a long-running, successful off-Broadway musical.
And finally, she received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2013 and was honored with a U.S. Postal Service commemorative stamp in 2014, solidifying her status as a mainstream American cultural icon.
So, to summarize Joplin's whirlwind, 8-year journey, she was the alienated girl from Port Arthur who managed to transform her profound pain and rejection into a genre-defining voice. Her brief peak saw her sell millions and achieve global stardom, yet she struggled constantly, even to her final hours, to reconcile her deep private pain with her explosive public success.
She achieved everything she desperately wanted, right? Fame, fortune, the ability to escape that constrained life in Texas. But the destructive enthusiasm she channeled on stage, which created the music we love, it seemed inextricably linked to the addiction she channeled off stage.
It's like she traded one form of destruction, small-town conformity, for another, rock and roll self-destruction.
Which brings us full circle to her deepest internal conflict, as noted by her psychiatric social worker, Bernard Giarratano. Janis genuinely felt her only 2 life choices were becoming a secretary or a mother in Port Arthur.
Or pursuing a music career, which she feared meant an inevitable self-destructive relapse into drugs.
Yet at the time of her death, she was on the verge of releasing Pearl, the biggest commercial and artistic success of her career. She had briefly found that stability in Brazil with David Niehaus, and she was engaged, however unreliably, to Seth Morgan. She was potentially building a third path.
So here is the provocative question for you to mull over as we conclude this deep dive. If Janis Joplin had lived past the age of 27, would she finally have been able to carve out that third way? A path that successfully merged her intense artistic fulfillment and freedom with the personal stability she occasionally sought.
Or was the destructive, necessary chaos so integral to the power and authenticity of the sound she created that stability and freedom were always destined to remain mutually exclusive for her?
That unrelenting struggle between stability and artistic fire is exactly why her voice, her story, and her music resonate just as powerfully today as they did a half-century ago.
Thank you for diving deep with us.